The witch has locked herself in her hovel to stop the crows getting in. Quick, kill all the crows so you can go and talk to the witch.
Surprisingly enough, another kill all the stuff mission. This one isn't a tutorial, this is the real deal. We're going to be fighting enemies here that will be fighting for a large portion of the game, but that doesn't mean it's difficult. Unlike the butt mushrooms, the crows don't go down with a single swipe or slam. They take one slam and one swipe, 3 swipes, or 2 slams. One slam and one swipe seems to be the most efficient method. The same advice I gave for the butt mushrooms though, that's general advice. If you jump before using the slam, then the enemies are incredibly unlikely to deal damage to you. I'm not sure I've noticed a time where they actually have. This is the same siren tree we saw in the first video. There's no differences aside from enemy placement. Well, and the heart pot placement. But aside from those two things, it's exactly the same place. Last time we didn't really jump across the tree any, and that might have been confusing if you were playing the game yourself. You might have thought one of the heart pots was up here on the tree, but they were saving all this real estate for this mission, because there are 2 heart pots on the tree now. And I have actually gotten myself lost up here once or twice because it's difficult to see a couple of the ledges. There are a lot of mana crystals for some reason though, as though you would want to use the magic up here for any reason, when the only magic we have right now is the float magic. Not exactly useful for combat purposes. We can use it though to land directly on the siren tree's nose. And you'll notice that his eyes actually follow us. It's not very obvious when we're down there because we can't adjust the camera angle upward, but you can see it perfectly plainly right here. It is possible for Malice to take fall damage, so we can either use the float magic or use our slam to negate said fall damage, because for some reason if you use the slam her legs don't break upon hitting the ground, as they normally would. Although this is our second time visiting the siren tree, we won't be coming back here a lot. We'll come back here one more time and that's it. The game isn't that long, so if we came back here 4 times or more, it would take up so much of the game that it would become a hindrance to the game's pacing. Not that the game's pacing is stellar or anything. Now that we've done the dirty work of collecting all 5 heart pots, it's time to talk about the actual mission we came here to do, which is kill all the crows. I've already talked about the most efficient method to kill them, but I'm a weirdo and I memorized even more things about this game, so let's talk about those too. There are exactly 3 waves of crows to fight. The last of them appears in front of the witch's hovel. The enemy layout in front of the witch's hovel would seem to suggest that they're supposed to be more difficult to deal with than the normal ones, but if you use the strategies I laid out, you shouldn't get hit at all. They do have a pretty small aggro range, all things considered, though. You have to get unreasonably close before they recognize you're there. If they saw you're there from a greater distance, then the combat in this game might actually be something a little bit difficult. And hey, I actually did get hit while jumping in the air that time. Maybe I didn't press the slam button early enough, but hey, there's a first time for everything. That animation is really cute, but it's also incredibly silent, which is awkward and does not make the game feel particularly polished.
Oh, little black thingies! I don't like them! Get them away!
You want me to whack him, Grandma?
Yes! Get them! They're after my savings, you know. Oh, I feel all queer just looking at them.
Yeah, see, I don't think you could call the witch's voice acting stellar in general, but for what they're going for, it's clearly perfectly fine. She sounds like a crazy old cartoon witch lady. On the other hand, Malice's voice acting seems out of place. I think I get that her design is supposed to be a contrast to everything around her, but her voice acting isn't nearly sassy enough for that. The easiest way to kill these bugs is to stun them with our swipe and then slam immediately after they're stunned. The journal will actually tell us this directly if we bother to read it. I'm not sure many people would bother to read it because a journal entry appears whenever you do anything. The crystal heart pots in the witch's hovel are very easy to get to, also very easy to notice. They contrast very well in the environment. And the environment is small too. There will be points where the collectibles will be more of a hassle, and you'll know exactly what I mean when we get there. But for now, let's get back to squashing these bugs. You can actually stun the bugs after they burrow if you're quick enough with your swipe. And if you smash immediately after you swipe them, they pretty much always die. You don't need to move or anything. A lot of the objectives early in the game involve killing a set number of things, in case you can't tell. Maybe this is all just to get you used to the combat, I'm not sure. The game does have a lot of variety in its locations, its objectives maybe not so much. It is a little humorous that these bugs drop hearts. I mean, yeah, you can get hurt by them if you run directly into them, and I've done that a few times. But if you die because you keep running your face into these mostly harmless insects, then I think that's your fault and the game should let you die.
You a little treasure, killing all those awful things like that. Why don't you come and give old Witchy a lovely big kiss?
Not until you wax those lips. Besides, I'm in kind of a hurry. Need to find some kind of glowworm dudes.
Glowworms? Oh, yes. They live just through that pipe. Tiny little fellas they are. Can't say I care for 'em much. Giving off light at all hours of the day and night. Oh, it's a disgrace.
Well, how am I gonna get down there?
Stand under that tap there. It's magic. It shrinks everything until it's really tiny.
Maybe it's not magic. Maybe you're just not following the washing instructions. This tap here, yeah? Excuse me.
Before you go, how about a nice treat? It's so lovely having a wisecracking youngster about the place.
Did you know it's impossible to find Malice's soundtrack anywhere? Now, I'm not saying that if you're watching this and you have the capability to rip the soundtrack that you should do that. But if you're watching this and you have the capability to rip the soundtrack, you should do that.
Excellent. Boost magic. Pull and hold the right trigger and press the B button at the same time. You'll get a boost for slash and quake while the magic lasts.
Sometimes he calls it slash, sometimes he doesn't. I prefer swipe and slam. That seems a lot easier to remember. Using the boost magic makes it so that we can now kill the crows with a single slam. But the boost magic doesn't last very long, so it may seem useless for normal enemies because it wears off so fast. But there is a utility for it, and we'll see it in this video. For now, let's head into that pipe, but not into the sewer, mind you. This is not a sewer yet.
Malice! Oh, Malice! We'll all die! Kill all the spiders, please!
The spiders are so harmless and easy to deal with that there's not a lot to say about them. I pretty much just jump and mindlessly press the slam button until they're dead. You can also swipe them to kill them, but the slam kills them in one hit, so I think it's a bit easier. They also all drop hearts, so even if by some means you do manage to get yourself hurt, they'll take care of that for you.
Malice be praised. My humble prayers have been answered. Thank you, sweet, bounteous goddess. May you rule forever on high.
Yeah, let's hope. What you got there, slimy dude?
An unworthy gift of speed magic, oh hot one.
Speed? I don't know. Sounds kinda 70s.
It will help us thou whiz past the slower evils thou mightest meet.
Mightest? Is that a word?
Speed will be useful, Malice. Pull and hold the right trigger and press the X button for a short burst of swiftness. It'll get you out of trouble.
Neat. Hey, groveling wormy guy. You seen a kinda key dealy anywhere around here?
Ah, no! Great Malice, forgive me! I have failed you! But perhaps our poor and unworthy gods may help you.
You got unworthy gods?
Next to you, Great Malice, they are at best mediocre. Please, you must go this way, through the second cavern. It is a difficult path, oh groovy goddess. May your celestial sneakers guide you well. We will meet again at Bonehenge.
Again, the Glowworm guy's voice may not be good in general, but it's exactly what I expected a fantasy Glowworm thing to sound like. I mean, when you look at that guy's face, what noise do you think is gonna come out? Because that's exactly what I imagined. The double jump is really floaty, and I'm pretty sure we can make these jumps without the float magic. But if you're like me and you're really terrified of falling, then it works for that purpose. The Glowworm priest also made it sound like this pathway we're taking is kind of dangerous. I guess it could be considered dangerous for normal people, but for a platforming mascot, not so much. Especially not this part. Yeah, the floor crumbles, but you fall, what, a few feet? If we were normal size, that wouldn't even be a fall. There are also crow monsters in here, which I guess the glowworms might have trouble dealing with, but the combat is something to scoff at.
Malice! Oh, Malice, help me! I've lost my babies! I only turned my back for 5 minutes! Oh, find them, please!
Okay. Can't you people do anything for yourselves?
I need 20, or I'll lose my social security! Oh, hurry!
She needs 20, alright, Malice? Not 19, not 18, she needs 20. Do you think the government cares if 19 babies is almost 20? She needs 20 babies. I've turned on the Swift magic, which you'll see, as promised, does make Malice move way faster. It also has a second property the game doesn't tell you, where it lets you run on air very briefly. This is super useful, especially in this section. You'll notice that having the Swift magic activated does not change our jumping at all. For some reason, the jumping mechanics work completely independently of our speed. I have no idea why that is. It's possible they just couldn't figure out how to program it in a way that was satisfactory. There is a mercy in this game's platforming in that when you fall to your death, you don't actually die, you simply lose a heart. If you did die every time you fell, the game would be a little bit unbearable for reasons we may or may not get into, if I'm fortunate. That death was also completely avoidable, especially with Swift magic turned on, but, you know, Butterfingers, stuff happens. I do think this area was intended to demonstrate Swift magic because some of the glowworms are on crumbling platforms, and if the crumbling platforms crumble, the glowworms will then be floating in the air. So you practically have to use the Swift magic to reach them unless you want to plummet to your death multiple times. And I kind of like that. I wish more of the platforming segments in this game were unique like this or tried to teach you something about the mechanics, but for the most part the platforming is really simple. And even though this place works as a great tutorial for the Swift magic, we're not going to be using the Swift magic all that much either, especially in a platforming context, unless we go out of our way to do it. The Swift magic will have a few more utilities, just like the, what was it called, the boost magic? But it's by no means essential. You can totally complete the game without ever using it. It serves its purpose insofar that it makes certain challenges easier, and I'm okay with that. I think that's alright. I don't think you should have to make your abilities mandatory in a game. Outside of our brief talk about the design, I find it awkward that these boxes are labeled ammunition. They never contain ammunition, and this one even contains a crystal heart pot, which is not where you would expect to find one of these. Usually crates have much less important items. And here, I'll show you the swift magic on display properly. Yeah, as you can see here, it allows you to briefly run on the air. And that's what I would recommend using it for.
Oh, thanks, love. I'm too fat and lazy to go chasing after it myself.
No kidding. You know where I can find some place called Bonehenge?
Oh, yes, it's through here, past the pit puzzle. Oh, well met, glorious goddess. You who rule from the top of the tree.
Yeah, I rule, I know. Now let's get to this Bonehenge place before you kiss my butt to oblivion.
Something you may not have taken the time to think about, but I certainly did, is that the Glowworm Kingdom is depressingly small. I mean, we're already done with it. This small area right here with these platforms, this is the largest area in the Glowworm Kingdom. We're done now. I do question how the Glowworm Priest made it past all these crows, because you see him over there on the other side of this pit. And the lady back there called this a pit puzzle, but I think that's a bit generous when all we have to do is step on 3 switches in order and then jump on the platform before it raises up completely.
Oh, greatest goddess, we must away to Bonehenge.
Bonehenge, a place of great power. This is where the glowworms call upon their gods. I hope they get it right this time. I sense the 3rd key is near.
Sorry? What do you mean, get it right this time?
Silence! Something approaches our unworthy realm. I can feel... Oh, no! Not that! No!
That's your god? Jeez, you guys need a better religion.
Malice, forgive me. It's the Firefly Queen. She'll kill us all.
I'm bad. Behold, my Queen of Fire. Isn't she seducing?
Oh hey, it's the first boss worth anything. So this boss has 3 phases. The first phase is when she tries to drop bombs on us. And the best part is that she drops the bombs from a different angle each time. You have a spare second to react and figure out which angle she's dropping them from. It's a lot easier to react in time if you have the Swift spell activated, so we're going to have that active for most of the fight. Her second phase is when she flies around trying to sit on us, and also drops out 2 rows of bombs as a result. These are a bit harder to avoid because they're in a spread instead of a straight line like her airdrops. She puts a ring of fire around herself when she needs to recharge. When she drops to the ground, we activate our boost magic, and even a simple swipe takes out a whole quarter of her health. Keep in mind that was one swipe, the weakest attack we have, with our boost magic active. Keeping in mind that our slam is twice as powerful as our swipe, do the math, and yeah, a boosted slam takes out a whole half of her health bar. The reason we only used a swipe instead of a slam was to give her enough time to use all the variations of her attack. She does stick to these 2 types of attack throughout the entire fight, but she has a couple variations on them, and you only get to see one of the variations if you kill her in 2 hits. These variations are just, well, she adds more bombs, which make her attacks harder to avoid, and also makes the bombs way louder because they hit in larger numbers. That second thing isn't important to the gameplay, but it's something I certainly noticed. Because of these variations in her attack, though, she goes from a minor threat to something you'll actually have to use your reflexes for actively. I mean, she's not a great boss, but she's certainly serviceable. There's nothing really wrong with her design. And I did kind of glaze over my favorite thing about this boss fight. I mentioned it briefly, but when she drops bombs on you from above, she comes at you from a different angle each time. You can't really memorize where she's coming from, so it's all about reflexes. That may be considered a negative to you depending on how you look at boss design, but I definitely prefer it to things that are too predictable. And you can see I kept my promise about the variations in her attack patterns. Even when she does drop the bombs in large numbers like this, it's still not necessary to use the swift magic, but I really would suggest it. It just makes it so much easier that there's no reason not to use it, you know? And that's what it's for in the first place. Back when I first completed this game, I rarely used the magic at all, and I regret that now, because it does make the game easier and more fun to play, even if it's easy to ignore it.
Oh, first-rate fly swatting, my dear. That should hurt Dog God a little too. Come, fetch the key, which, by strange coincidence, has the power to transform you back to normal size. How thoroughly fortunate. Back to the orrery.
Whoa!
It would appear that the next key rests deep within the clockwork universe itself. Be a dear and fetch it, would you? My mechanisms are now strong enough to construct a new, more potent weapon, but only with the fourth key can I fill it with mystic energy.
Will it kick butt?
Like a concrete mule.
I'm gone.
It's almost time for our second of 3 weapons, which means we're about 1/3 of the way through the game, but we have another world to go through before we actually get this weapon. I'll see you guys next time.